Today we're going to start off by looking at the Ikenga shrine figure. So this is a wooden object from the Igbo people of Nigeria, and it is an object that would be owned by a male and is going to represent strength and accomplishments. And so this is going to be an object that is very personal to the individual who owns it. You guys may notice this top, third, more than a third of the sculpture are horns. And that speaks to the power of a male, like a ram's horn. Sometimes with the Ikenga, we'll see that they're curved. These are straight, obviously. All right, so we're gonna watch this smart history video and talk more about it.
One of the large ethnic groups in what is now Nigeria is Igbo, and among the Igbo in northern Igbo land is a tradition of creating what is known as an Ikenga.
Ikenga are carved wooden figures that have a human face with animal attributes. They can be small.
Now, even though they say human face, again, the goal is not realism, and so they're going to be very abstracted. So as you look at this, you'll probably see here, right? This has one of the curled horns, whereas ours has the straight horns. But you can see that there is a face. It's just going to be very abstracted, and that's their aesthetic.
Inches, they can be very abstract. Sometimes it's more naturalistic, like the one we see at the Penn University Museum.
Likely made for a warrior. He's seated on a stool, which is an important signifier of honor. He holds in his right hand, as all Ikenga do, a sword, and this is an expression of power. But in his left hand, this particular figure seems to hold a human head, and that would be an expression of his warrior status. Maybe I shouldn't say that they all hold a sword in the right hand, because some of the Ikenga are abstract and don't actually have arms.
So it's interesting that he'd say that, because as we look at our Ikenga, which is the one on the right here, it doesn't really have limbs, right? It doesn't really have arms. It's very much wedded together as one piece. And so it represents the power of the arm, specifically the right arm, without depicting a right arm. Okay, so this is a symbolic power, and this would have been very well understood among the Igbo people.
So if you were Igbo, you would know that the Ikenga stood for the power of the right hand, and it really wouldn't be necessary to depict it in the carving. In other words, that same concept in African art, that it's not so much about what it looks like, but rather the concept that the figure is trying to convey. The Ikenga were personal objects that suggested the achievement of their owners, and they could relate to that person's occupation, whether they were a hunter, a farmer, maybe they were an exceptional yam farmer. They could have been a smith, or they could be a university professor.
And once an Ikenga had been commissioned by a master carver, had been consecrated, it would enter into a shrine within the owner's home.
And the Ikenga is known as the place of strength. So it's a personal spirit of one's human achievements, one's ability. And
so that's going to help us understand its function, right? It's a place of strength. And so this would be kept in a box, in a chest, in some sort of container in the home of the man who owns it, the man that it was commissioned for. And this is going to be a place that he can go and he can look at this object, he can hold this object, and he can get strength from it. Okay, so it's going to empower him and remind him of his importance, of his strength, of his, fierceness, or good farming skills, or strong fighting skills, whatever it is made for. And so it's going to reinforce his ego, really.
It holds items that helps the owner get things done. So yes, the power of the right hand is always emphasized. The right hand holds a sword, holds the ability to cut through things to get to what one wishes in life. The left hand can hold a whole host of things, including the tusk of an elephant in the form of a trumpet, a head, or even a staff to suggest one's rank.
So let's take a close look at this particular object. We have ram's horns that are almost as big as the entire body. They curl at the top, and they're decorated with these wonderful vertical and horizontal abstract forms.
There's a great saying among the Igbo that a ram fights with his head first. The idea that any action is taken first with the head. So the head is emphasized, the power, the aggression, the strength of the head in these ram's horns. But we'll notice that it has a lot of detailing on the sides, these pod-shaped forms with dots and lines incised into them, which seems to mirror what the figure has on the sides of his head.
We also see that there are decorative patterns that have been cut into the body, which are likely a representation of scarification, of body decoration.
And typically, scarification found on the temple and also on the forehead suggested that the wearer was a title-holding member of an Igbo society. And so this figure, who also has this patterning on his temple and all his horns, seems to also suggest that high rank.
So this is not a portrait, and so we shouldn't think of it in that way, but it is a symbolic representation of the power, the authority, and the accomplishment of the individual for whom this was made.
I like to think of it as a sacred diploma, something that you would hang in your office to remember the status that you've reached through hard work, through discipline, through the mastery of a craft.
I would love to have my own personal Ikenga.
All right. So let's look more at this object. So the Igbo are continue to be an important ethnic group in Nigeria. This is a practice that has lasted for many generations. Think about this as kind of a therianthrope. If you guys remember all the way back in content area 2, we talked about therianthrope, which are animal-human combinations. So this is going to be somewhat human, but also somewhat animal because of the ram's horns, right? So you can see kind of a human-ish face here, but then you have the horns, right? These can be small depending on the wealth and status of the owner. Again, these are objects made by men for men. So these are not, there's nothing feminine about these objects, okay? So they can be really, really small. They can be up to a couple feet tall based on you know, importance and wealth. And so it's kind of like a trophy in that sense that depending on how much you want to pay is how much you're going to be, you know, represented or seen, or how, you know, fancy it's going to look. A lot of times you will see them with a sword in the right hand. Again, this one is made in such an abstract way that the power of the right hand or the power of the right arm is understood, but not literally demonstrated here. It's about this sense of what it conveys, which is going to be the power and accomplishments of the owner. Kept in a shrine in the owner's home, viewed as a place of strength. Again, they could go there and they could be reminded of that strength. To someone else, this is just a piece of wood. But to the person who owns it, the man who owns it, this is going to be an object of power. It's not supposed to be a portrait of that man, okay? It's just a representation.